All right, we are all set. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call the Regional School District 13 Board of Education special meeting of the Student Achievement Committee to order at on May 24th, 2023 at 4:32 p.m. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, number 2, public comment. I don't believe we have any on for public comment. Okay, we'll go on to number 3, approval of the agenda. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Jamie. Second.
Second.
Second by Amanda. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, I hear someone. Okay. Approval of the minutes of the April 26th Student Achievement Committee meeting. Looking at the minutes, I'm not sure if anyone has any changes. I do have one change to the minutes. It is on, did anyone else have any minutes before I go into mine? Okay, so the only changes I would have on page 4, on paragraph 1, Mrs. Dahlheimer summarized that there's no structure change in grade 5. I believe that's supposed to be Stephanie or Liza. If either one of you can confirm that, we can make that change. But I do not think it is me. I think it's just a change in the way that the minutes went. Yeah, I think it's Stephanie, so we'll change that. Does anyone else have any changes? Jamie, did you have any changes?
Looks good to me. That was a lot for that meeting. Wow.
It was a lot, yeah. So it made sense that there was some muddling and trying to figure out the transcription. So I think that is the only one. So I'll take a motion to approve those with that change. Someone wants to make a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Jamie.
Second.
Second by Amanda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. All right. Are you down to number 5, guys? Measures of success. I'm not sure who wants to start with this one, if Doug or Eliza or Stephanie, but happy to have one of you take over.
I can start, Liza. I just we had briefed this. I want to say it was back in November originally, and then brought it up at the retreat and kind of gave a refresher last time. And I think we're just looking for some direction about specific items on here or the entire concept. Again, we feel like it's important to have some defined measures of success for the district that we can report on at least annually. But, you know, we want the board to be in support of those. And some of these are easier to gather up than others. And so if there is any feedback for today, we'd be interested in that feedback. And if not, if we could put this on a future agenda, whatever the pleasure of the group is. Did you have anything to add to that, Liza?
Yes, I just feel that while the state has those 12 accountabilities for each district, we are looking to add some to that to make it a more community-based approach in which we can really look at the different accountabilities for different areas that we are focused on as a community. So we would like to add some, and that is what our measures of success will do.
you want to go through those again, Liza? Because I know we were going into a deep dive on them, or if you were going to just take questions and comments on those.
Sure. I'd be happy to go through them if you would like. I think as Doug mentioned, we're looking to see if this is the direction that we should head. So then we can start researching and looking at ways to go ahead and look into these different measures. But some of the measures, if you wanted to look through, we have, as they were sent out last time, we have the benchmarks assessments in reading and math K through 2. And we picked K through 2 because they do not have the standard tests of SBAC and GSS and so on. So those would be used as a standard test for K through 2. So all of those at the top, reading and math benchmarks, SBAC, NGSS, SAT, those are the testing that is currently used in the accountability report. So we would keep those, of course. Then in addition to that, high school credit prior to grade 9, that would show the availability of coursework for those that are ready prior to grade 9 and moving them forward. For the graduation rates, that is already part of the accountability plan, and that is pretty standard to measure success in a school district. Then we have the graduate life plan. That is to ensure that learners are ready for the future, and so that we can attest that we have done our job in making them ready for the future. So we were looking at different ways to do that. One such way would be to have a learner profile or a place where learners can explore the different options, and then through the capstone, and then to have some graduate life plan. Are they going to do the further education? Are they going to do employment? Are they going to enlist? What is their direction after? And so we could use that as a measure to see if we are helping our students to move forward and be ready for their future. Underneath that is kindergarten readiness. There is a state readiness survey, which we could use to see if our students coming in are ready for kindergarten. That could be from pre-K as well as any other programs that we are offering. Underneath that, college credit or a certificate in high school. College credit is part of the accountability plan currently for the state. However, we wanted to add a certificate in high school. We do have some learners that are very interested in some sort of apprenticeships and other opportunities. We have some that have done really good internships throughout their senior year, and we want to give them the credit for that as well, not just APs and other credit bearing classes. And then the next would be something for college success. That is something that used to be measured. It's not the most reliable, so we would have to find a way to measure that appropriately, but that is something that we are looking for. It's not just who goes to college, but who has been successful in college and has been able to utilize the skills that they have learned in at their time in RSD 13 to be successful in college. Underneath that, internship participation and internship success rate. We are looking to expand opportunities in many different areas. And so the number of learners that have the opportunity to be in internships and be successful in internships is a measure that we could look for, that we are interested in for our community. Gainful and meaningful employment, whether that is right after high school or that is after college, to know that they are career ready and that we have given them the skills for success in that career. Financial security. is another one we could look at as a measure to see if we have instilled the skills necessary to be successful. School climate is one that is extremely important. We do have our school climate survey already, and we need to ensure that while our ST13 students are in our schools, that they have a great climate in which to grow. Physical fitness, that is also already part of the accountability plan. There is a Connecticut physical fitness test. Mental and physical wellness, that could be part of a graduate survey that we could give to learners to see if after they leave us, they feel that they are mentally and physically well. That would be something that we would have to develop with a group to ensure that we feel that it would measure what we would like it to. Community service hours, community project rates, that is something that as a community I know is important to instill those values and to see if that is successful. And finally, civic engagement, which could also be part of our graduate study. And as Doug mentioned previously, the different colors that they are shaded in do reflect our wellness, employability, citizenship, and academics that we are looking to instill in our learners. So those are some of the things that we have come up with so far. And so we are looking for your input and to see if these are things that we should pursue. We can certainly look at things that you would like to pursue further or not. And so just a general idea about how to move forward with possibly adding some more community-based accountability measures into our accountability system.
Great. Thank you.
So
Amanda, go ahead.
I have a question. Yeah. Based on this draft, I don't see how it's different from the measurable outcomes we were given back in November. It looks different to me, but it's all mostly the same information that we received in a meeting previously, and we did not, at least I remember myself, didn't know how this was going to work in measuring outcomes. So how is this any different?
The feedback we first received was that there, if I remember correctly, was there were more assessments that would like to be seen on there, and we have added those assessments. And as far as how it will do that, that is what we are asking for, basically, to see if you would like us to pursue how these measures could help us in creating our accountability.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, my recollection was that when it was first presented, it was a bit overwhelming and even confusing to some. And so what we tried to do in this revision was make the graphics a little bit more clear and make it understandable, along with, as Liza said, adding in some things that board members had asked for. But we haven't moved forward with this because we're still waiting for the fact that you guys even want something like this. And again, as she said, if there are things you'd like to see that we haven't included, additional things, we could certainly try to fill them in. And by the same token, if there's things on here that you don't like or that you wouldn't support or think is a good use of measurement, I think the bottom line on all of this is this makes us very vulnerable as a district, because if we say we're going to measure these things, they may not come out the way that we think that they should, and they may not reflect positively. But to me, that's how you communicate to your community and how you grow, but also how you measure the progress that you have made. And again, I probably said this a few times, but I think it's important, and Liza said it too. Most of the standard accountability measures that districts and states implement focus on the children when we have them, and that's really, really important. But if you look at our mission statement and all the things that we aspire to prepare our learners to do after they graduate, most of those we don't measure. And yet that's what people in the rearview mirror say, oh, the school really prepared me well to do X, Y, and Z at work, in school, in the community. And we think it's important to look at some of those measures if we can.
One thing that I think of is that, like, I like the idea of looking longitudinally, but I also think it's important to make sure that however we end up defining or what metrics we use to gather the data, like when my ears pricked up with the idea of like and I don't remember the exact words, but like financial success or whatever, that there will be things that are outside of the student and regional us that could impact that, right? So it has to take into account what the economic, if we're in the middle of a recession and all of our kids come in with, X, like it has to be some kind of a relevant matrix. And we just make sure that whatever measurements we use take into account things that are outside of the kids' control, the learner's control and or the district's control.
I think that's a good point, Linda. And I don't think we're even standing here saying that just because it's on here that we can say it'll be measured in a valid way and that we can stand behind it. I think what we're saying is we don't even want to put the work into that if you don't think it's a viable measure. A lot of this, for those of you that recall, came from a thought exchange we did with parents and also with our learners. And we asked them about their hopes and dreams for the future. And this being gainfully employed and being financially secure, and maybe for some parents, financially independent of their parents, which is a big deal these days, that like went way to the top. So it may be that we can't measure it. And I think your point is a really good one. Some of that may have nothing to do with how we prepared our learners, but we've had some parents recently talk about, financial management type courses and how are we preparing kids for not just like college and work, but even to like balance a checkbook and a budget and things like that. Again, I don't know that we can own that space completely, but I think we have a responsibility to try, because we certainly know what the data looks like for most adults in terms of like, the data about how many people in this country don't have hardly any savings. And if they have one major car repair or one major financial setback, how they're really in dire straits. And a lot of that cuts across many different income levels. It's just simply a mindset of financial management. I'm sorry, it's probably way too much of an answer, but I wanted to make sure people knew that we didn't just come up with that on our own.
I think something that might be important too, and if we go back and we look at the original strategic plan from 2018 to 19, when before Kathy had left, there was a lot of laid out framework that seemed to have a lot of this student-centered learning in it. Kathy had developed a lot of things. She hadn't gotten past there yet, but the direction of the board at the time was to take Kathy's plan and move forward with it. I'd like to see how we can take Portrait of a Citizen and combine the two ideas together in order to effectively have success in this district. It is something that the board, I know a lot of the board members have discussed, and I think that it's important that we look at it. Kathy had a lot of buy-in with the district and a lot of clear visions, and I think that we're losing a lot of vision in a lot of the wording that we're doing with these measures of success and even the strategic plan altogether. We have to get back down to showing people how this is going to work from the ground up. How do you vision this? How is my child going to go through this? And words are not going to do that. So I would like to see if we can go back and see how much the framework was really looked at from Kathy's. I don't know if anyone else has any questions or wants to add to that. Or if you guys even think, if you guys have taken a look at that from the beginning. I'm not sure how much happened at the beginning of your tenure, Doug, but.
Well, I can say I saw some of the work that was done. I didn't see anything that resembled any types of measures of success on this level. I'm not saying it wouldn't have evolved into something like this at some point. And I would also say, in my experience, kind of globally in this work, this doesn't have to even be part of anybody's plan, but it's usually one that people question if you don't have it, because if you don't say how you're going to measure your own success and you don't define that for people, this could stand independent of anything that we actually say we're going to do or not do in the schools, if we feel like this actually equals success for our children. So I'm not saying we can't go back and look at the things you're saying to look at, but I don't recall seeing anything that really went here. And again, that's not a criticism. I think that's true probably of most districts. So, and again, I think that's why we're kind of asking if this is, too much or not the direction, or if you don't want measures, if you just want to default to the state of Connecticut's kind of accountability thing. Some of this is actually in there. I just think most districts want to define their own success and not just say, well, whatever Connecticut says is successful, we're just adopting that.
It's been my experience over the last 5 years or so. This is another one of these flavors of the day, meaning let's have something called Portrait of a Citizen, Portrait of a Graduate. Our district uses Vision of a Graduate and a bunch of fancy logos of what we want. And that's great. It is looking at the end game. I do like and appreciate that. But, again, it has to be backed up with a little bit of substance. And again, this is only a beginning process. But I do appreciate the reach out to parents. What are your hopes and goals? And that is, I think, the best place to go. How we go about that, that's, there's a lot. On the subject of the tracking student progress, I mean, our contract is basically over with these students when they receive that diploma. It's extraordinarily difficult, as I think we all realize, to, find out what's happening. In the post-secondary world, we had a great opportunity making the 6 months after they leave our building to gain employment, and they have to document what they did and the number of hours, and we received information from their employers. That's a whole different animal, and that would be extraordinarily difficult to track. It would be more of a volunteer thing. Let us know what you're doing. Come on, man, you're an RSD 13 graduate. We're proud of you. We love you. We want to hear what you're about. But it wouldn't be any way we could ever track it with any validity in numbers and things.
Amanda?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really thankful that you guys put all this work into it and have been working on this for a while now. My only concern is with discussion that we've had in the past with some board members questioning the direction that the board wants to go in with our strategic plan. I don't know that it makes sense to move forward with these types of measurable outcomes or whatever we want to call them. That's just my opinion.
Laura, do you have anything? Nope. Anyone else?
Sorry, I'm here. I just would kind of have to agree a little bit with what both you guys said. I think that we have to kind of piggyback a little bit more as far as where we are going with our strategic plan, and then be able to really evaluate and look at these before I can honestly say and feel confident saying like, yes, I want to move forward with these measures of success. I feel like the two need to align, and I don't even know if we have, I know we don't have that completely final. So that's just my 2 cents too.
But, we do want to respect how much work is being done and how much excitement around this has happened. So if the student achievement feels comfortable, I wouldn't mind putting it on an agenda for June to have a full discussion with the board. I wouldn't want the student achievement committee to be able to give a direction today that wasn't the direction we were looking to go with the measurable outcomes or even the strategic plan at this point. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I know that we have more than just our board members here that would be at our full meeting as well. So
I think it would make a lot of sense to bring it before the entire board and have a full discussion. Absolutely.
One thought I had, being that we have our children from K through 12, we do have the vision of where we would like them to be by the time, and it's important for them to know, and perhaps some way of measuring the progress at each grade level or at each school, perhaps. Obviously it's going to have different definitions, of course, where they're at in that respect. But as long as they're aware of what the expectations are, and hopefully they're able to say, yeah, I actually think I am socially conscious. I actually think I'm a global citizen, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe there's some way of measuring a little bit about each one of those as they progress.
Lucy, do you have anything on this one before we move on? Or if anyone else does, either Liza, Stephanie, Doug?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, so we'll bring this back to the full board for the June meeting. I'll make note of that. And we'll move on to number 6, the NEASC update. Doug, you're going to take that one?
Yes, thank you. And again, many of you probably have more experience with NEASC than I do. We had something in Virginia, but it wasn't NEASC, it was SACS, a similar thing. For those that don't, NEASC stands for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. They accredit universities, they accredit public schools, private schools. My understanding is the majority of high schools, at least in the New England area, do subscribe and participate in this process. What we want to bring in front of you this afternoon for your thoughts and discussion, and possibly for the full board, depending on where you want this to go, is a thought that we have to pivot away from doing a high school only NEASC visit and doing a district level NEASC accreditation process. This is only really possible because NEASC significantly changed their whole process and systems around 2019, and they've recently updated their standards actually a month or two ago with a slight revision. But again, I've not been through it, but to talk to folks in our high school who have been through this, and folks in other high schools and other superintendents, it sounds like this process was extremely time-consuming and cumbersome, and not seen as a whole lot of value to the high school. Fran Kennedy is the local rep who works with our school in all of this. And he's talked to groups of superintendents that I've been part of, and we've talked as a staff. And so the opportunity here, as we see it, is to continue with NEASC. We think it's important to stay with NEASC, but again, instead of making it solely focused on the high school, focusing on the district level. And I can send you all a link to the website for NEASC and their district accreditation, or you can Google it, so you can get a lot more information than what I have time to share here. But I think it's important to state up front that the value that we see in this is that it helps the different schools in the district make sure that they are communicating with each other, that they're aligned, that we have a program that actually looks pre-K to 12, and doesn't just say, oh, everything kind of happens at the high school, because we know that it doesn't. I personally believe that even though our non-high schools may not be in love with the idea of having groups from the outside coming in and giving them feedback, that when you subject yourself to feedback, you grow, and it also helps validate. It's kind of I don't want to call it another measure of success, but it would kind of be a feather in the cap of the district, I think, if we could say that we felt that our schools were good enough that we would participate in a district level accreditation process. And so I can go into more details if you guys want me to at this point, but I just think I wanted to put it out there and see if there were any initial reactions or questions, or if any of you had heard of anything about the district accreditation process, or even about the new process. Some of our folks have talked to folks in surrounding districts who have gone through it at the high school level since the changes, and they personally attest that the process is not what it used to be. It's a lot better, it's a lot less labor intensive, and it's actually a lot more helpful to the high school moving forward, and we feel like it would have the same benefit for the district. So let's see, Linda, your hand has been up. Sorry,
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah, well, just because like I have a PTSD reactions. I have served on a committee, like I have been on a visiting committee, and I have been in a school that's gone through the process. And I am not familiar with the new process. So I'll put that out there first, but I can't imagine it is so much different that it's not the absolute horror story that the process is. I agree with the pieces you mentioned as outcomes for doing it as a district wide, but the amount of work that goes into being prepared for that visit, first of all, it's expensive to do it district wide rather than just high school. But we can do all of that without NEASC. I mean, if we want to have those conversations and have, whether it's an outside consultant or have a protocol for doing it internally, it is, especially in the secondary level. So the middle school going through this process of having to get all of that documentation together. And quite frankly, a lot of times it turns into people just, I mean, the number of districts in the state that have advisory programs because they went through NEASC and then nothing ever came about with them and they just flounder is, I mean, it's got to be over 60% because NEASC says, oh, we should do this. So it becomes very performative. So I think we have to, without doubt, we have to do it for the high school. But I think it is, especially with everything going on, not just, you know, in town, but in nationwide, as far as the state of education, I think it is a huge burden to put on the elementary and middle school teachers. Yeah, so that is my very long-winded, oh my God, don't do this to them statement. Thank you.
Well, Linda, I appreciate that feedback. And I think if you were talking about the previous process, and again, I've not been through any of them. And I know that we have folks probably on the line who can speak to other districts who have been through it. I can tell you they have reduced their number of standards from, I think, 13 to 5 to simplify the process. They have reduced the number of indicators, I think, from 60 something to like 30. And they've gone away from this prescriptive model where they tell you have to do certain things. And I think the reason is, I believe people started saying they weren't going to pay for the work anymore because they weren't seeing the value add. But I think your points are valid and we should consider them if we're going to move forward. So I don't know. Lots of other hands are up. So let me stop talking.
All right, Deb's up.
Amy?
Oh, I
Defer
was
to
gonna-
Deb. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna let you go first, but so it's my first time through too, right? So we've met with Fran Kennedy. I was very hesitant. You know, when I got there, it was supposed to be last year. We put it off for a year. Katie's actually been through the new process, so she can speak a little bit more to that. But it is turned from a prescriptive piece to a reflective piece, a kind of celebration of, oh, look where you are instead of where you need to be. So the reflective piece is one of, you know, recognizing what you already are doing and maybe recognizing yourself where your growth can be. But it is not, Linda, to your point, because I had heard those same things, right? I've been in education too long. But Fran is very much about, like, we've turned this into a reflective piece for, sorry, they're coughing in my house, a reflective piece for growth. I like what he had to say. And to Linda, to your point, we're working with him on cost, but it's not going to be all that significantly more to include the whole district because we're small. The high school is the big nut. We're already paying a big amount. Yeah, we're going to pay it one way or another, to your point. And I don't know. I think it gives the district some clout, especially because this is a new program with NEASC and they're going toward district accreditation. But Katie can speak to the new process more.
Sure. And so I went through it as a teacher in the North Branford School District. And honestly, a lot of the teachers had gone through the previous one, Linda, that you had spoken to, and it came in with the exact same feelings. But the way they've restructured it, it just honestly makes a lot more sense about how to reflect on where we are and where those goals are that we want to go to. It's very manageable, breaking it down between staff throughout your building to gather data. The whole data process is much less cumbersome than the previous form of NEASC, where, I think they really heard schools saying, this is a disaster of a process and it needs to change so that more schools do participate for those reflective reasons instead. I would say, I was a subcommittee chair. My committee maybe had less than 10 staff members on it, and our part of the overall report maybe took 2 months. And it was really just self-paced, getting the information down. And nothing was really like you were rewriting things or trying to find answers. It was really just, what do you see actually going on in your building or through your district, and just reporting on that. Honestly, I as someone in the middle of my teaching career, I found it to be a nice reflective process. It helped me both as a teacher, but also as a member of my building, and just moving towards similar goals. And the feedback that we received, it was productive. It seemed relevant. And honestly, I came out of the process being like, all right, I can understand, personally why we went through this. And I felt as though the time spent was well worth it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Maura, go.
No, it's okay. I didn't have my hand raised. You go ahead. I'll raise my hand.
Ladies first.
Thank you. I was just going to say, you actually just answered my question, because I was wondering, if the younger grades don't need to do it, then why would we do it? So that answered that. But I'm just wondering, it sounds like it's a great reflective piece, but when do you guys foresee this happening in the buildings on top of everything else, like a brand new EL program? Like when is the time? I think you said 2 months it took. Is it involving all staff, and when will that happen for them if we did proceed? Thank you.
I could speak to that, Maura, because Fran actually did a session with our leadership team a couple weeks ago, knowing that we were going to be having this conversation. And if need be, I think we could bring him in front of this committee or the full board in the future. There's no rush to make this decision. Although if we're not going to do it, we'd kind of like to get the high school going with their process. The way that it would work, and we told them all about our situation with the EL curriculum and how we thought next year would be a complete non-starter with our elementary schools, is sometime during next school year, if we're interested in doing this, we would actually apply for the district to be brought into the process. And then nothing would actually start in terms of our own reflection, this 2-month process that Katie talked about, until the 24-25 school year. And we would choose when that would happen. Another big change, according to Fran, and I think Katie just attested to that, there was a thought in the past that like every teacher had to be involved, and it was almost an expectation or a mandate. Now it's more in a kind of volunteer, or could even be in a stipended space, where you recruit teachers who want to be part of this and who want to take ownership of doing this reflection. And so that would happen sometime in the 24-25 school year, and it would happen as a district. And so when they come for these visits, which would happen over the next several years, it wouldn't just be they come and they spend all their time at the high school. They would divide their time among all 5 of our schools, or however many schools we have at the time of those visits, maybe not as many if some of our plans go forward. And so that's the part that I think feels more manageable as well, that we are getting not just a look at each school, but also at the district level as to how we are aligning and managing the differences between schools. Because, in my experience, not just here, but it's, schools operate somewhat independently of each other, and it's important, whatever goals you're aiming for, that you have a thread that goes through all of them.
Lindsay's next.
Thanks, Jamie. My questions were, what are the drawbacks of going to a district-wide? Some of the concerns I have is that right now it doesn't seem like our elementary schools are consistent in the approach that we're offering. So I worry about possible denials of an accreditation if we're not able to do that. So I'm just wondering, what are those drawbacks? You're on.
So let me say this. We asked this question to Fran. The way that it's approached, and I guess Katie can speak to it, is I don't think we're in danger of not being accredited unless when they come on their first visit, which I think would be like 2 or 3 years out, and they look at our reflection, and then they come back 2 years later for their big visit, if they don't see progress and growth in that. So I think it's a legitimate question, and we asked it too, because nobody wants to subject yourself to something and then be labeled like as a failure. But I think the only way we would get denied, according to them, is if we just don't do anything. Like we just take their feedback and we just kind of ignore it. But again, to Deb's earlier point and to Katie, in some way we are defining our growth areas. Now it's within the framework of their standards. So I did drop the link into the chat box. If you, and you know, I'll just read you what their 5 standards are. I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's student learning, learning resources, learning support, learning culture, and professional practices. And under each of those 5 standards, you know, they define further, and they have some indicators. So you have to write your reflections grounded within those. But again, every school and every district that does this in New England is subjected to the same standards. So we feel pretty good in looking at those, that anything that we're doing would fall into that. But I think it's a really good question.
Well, and I think looking at too, if we, in this process, if I'm not mistaken, we have to have a 12 through K curriculum for every subject that has to be aligned and backwards designed. Do we have that? Is it something that we have time to create if we don't? Because we can't reflect on it if we don't have it currently laid out.
Okay, so another good question, and again, both of your questions have the same thread, as if this is kind of they're going to come and judge us, and if we don't have all these things, we kind of shouldn't do it. That is not the process they described to us. Like if they came and we didn't have something, they would identify that, and when they came back 2 years later, they wouldn't expect us to have it all, but they would want to see that we'd made progress towards it. So like one of our questions to them was, hey, we've just purchased and entered into this contract with this expeditionary learning. And so if you visit us in a couple of years, we're probably not going to be great at it yet. And they said, actually, they would applaud us for stepping into something. And wherever we were, that's what they were going to try to gauge. Now, again, to your example, if we didn't have a curriculum and it wasn't articulated and they mentioned that, and then 2 years later, we'd done no work, then I think we would not be kind of graded favorably, and we shouldn't be at that point.
So
And
there's no grading on the original accreditation. Is that what you're saying? So,
That-
but it is a public document that would point out just about every flaw within our program. So
these guys are nodding their heads. What I understand is one of the changes is that it really went from almost like a pass-fail grade thing to now one that is just measuring your growth, and it doesn't give you an absolute pass or fail. But I don't know. Katie, can you speak to that, or Deb? Because you guys heard the same presentation I did.
I'll say this, Lindsay. I think from where we've been in the 10 years that I've been here, I think this would help us align our objectives and more closely align the things we're doing, whether we have them or not, and start building that consistency that we can, then use to move forward. I think that's what you guys have all been wanting for a while, and maybe the boards before you as well. And this gives us an outside group to kind of say, hey, look, third grade is doing this, and maybe everybody should be doing that, or nobody should be doing that. They more recommend and guide and reflect with you afterwards. And Katie can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not you don't have all your curriculum, so you're not going to be accredited. It's going to be, 6th grade math is the way you just say, I'm making it up, but 6th grade math is the way you say, but it's not working for the 6th graders because of whatever reason. What should we be doing differently? It's all about the growth model. And, to Doug's point, they're not, and we did ask what the consumption was for the report. And yeah, we'd go out there and we'd bring it to you as a board. The other little piece of this is all building run. Admins do not run this. Like, they do not want our hands in this at all, because, right, we can muddy the water sometimes of what's actually going on in the classroom. I know you guys don't think that about us, but maybe a little bit. And so the teachers really get a good feel for what they're doing and what needs to be done. So at the high school, right, we may have some more consistency, but the middle school with the reconfiguration of a few years ago, the elementary schools being in flux a little bit, it might give us all a way to work toward those same goals that we're trying to get at. That's how I saw it. That's my perspective. I don't know if Katie or Jamie have something else. I know Maura has another question.
Jamie?
Does Maura want to go?
No,
You're up. You let all the ladies go first. So
Yeah,
you're
go
up.
ahead, Jamie.
Oh, okay. So, Katie, you've been through this. Did they still start with like a self-study when you referred to it, like a reflective piece? My experience has been sort of like leading questions. They want you to grade yourself, and in a written way, and then that maybe has little red flags. Oh, now we know what to look for, and that's all fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but probably the bigger issue I have, and just the cynicism I would have, is it's the only game in town. That always makes me a bit nervous. Why isn't there a competitive venue that does this? And I'm not discounting it. I'm not for it for the entire district. I'd be for it for the high school, purely because it does perhaps have some benefit for the student. And let's repeat that, benefit for the student. What is the benefit for the student? What is the benefit for the student at the high school level? Does that give them some preferential treatment when it comes to college entrance? Nothing to do with that. So what does it do for the student?
Well, Jamie, what I can tell you is these are the questions I was asking when I first got here, because it's not an insignificant expense that we pay and that other districts pay. And I believe that not doing it would be a mistake simply because everybody else does it. I know we talk about peer pressure and you're not supposed to do things because everyone else does it, but I think because they are the accrediting agency for colleges, there is a perception that if we didn't, that this would somehow hurt our children, our learners applying for colleges or what comes next. I don't think it would, but I would also say that even our rep, Fran, who we've referenced several times, and again, who we can make available if you guys want to get into this more with him, went through this, I believe, 3 times as a high school principal under the old process, and himself did not see great value to the process. And I think that's why he's very motivated to have changed the process and be, be part of it. Now, to be fair, he's also part of the system that gets paid for all this. So it's his job to promote this to us. And your point about the only game in town, I think is also a good one. I'm not aware of anything else similar up in this area or in this state. And talking to my colleagues, they're all going to do either the high school or the district. And the district is new. And I think one of the reasons we bring this to you at this point, not for a quick decision, but maybe for some more conversation, is it's a 10-year cycle. So if we see the value to the district level accreditation and we want to enter into it, we're able to get that value. If we decide 3 years from now that we thought we should have been in a district accreditation cycle and we're just going to do the high school, we're waiting like 7 years to get back into it. So I think it's something that bears our consideration, and that's why we brought it to you all today.
I think part of the hard part of it is that we have so much load on the staff right now coming into this EL program. I worry about this taxing staff. I worry about it in that we are still trying to figure out reconfigurations in buildings, and I don't know if it's the right time to do a full district accreditation. I'm fully for the high school accreditation. I just think that adding one more thing to the staff right now is going to be really tough, and I value the work that they're currently doing. So that's just.
I could see how the value is to the teachers, through the reflection process and having a fellow educator, because the people who do the site visits are indeed educators. So there's a collaboration thing going on, but it's educators just helping another educator, not necessarily always for the benefit of the student. And here I go again, and this is really important. I've seen over and over again. I'm very, very aware of local news, statewide news. I keep up on it. And every time there's a NEASC visit within a district where there are issues perhaps with facility, And every district has issues with facilities. No, it's so hard to maintain all these buildings with a small staff. It is used. It is used on a regular basis, sometimes by superintendents, sometimes by Board of Educations, sometimes by building administrators. Not that you would all would do that, but is used to say, we need a new building. We need a new roof, because they get the ubiquitous shot of one little ceiling tile with a yellow spot on it. It is absolutely egregious what I've seen over the years. Sometimes it's warranted, but a big part of what they do is also about facility, and they can make facility recommendations. So, again, nothing inherently wrong with that per se, but I'm vehemently against it when it becomes a media thing. And I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And I would not want to see this district succumb to that. Our maintainers do a great job for what they have. And, to me, buildings look pretty darn good, but it wouldn't take much for somebody to say, I don't like the way this looks. So that's another reason why I'm against it district-wide. I'm for it for the high school level.
I guess I'm a bit of an outlier because I think it's worth looking into for a number of reasons. And I'm sorry, my computer keeps cutting out for some reason, so I might get cut off. I like the idea of having an outside look at our schools. It's always good to, when you're doing something, you don't see it the same way that someone from the outside looking in would see it. I like the reflection, because there's also the inside reflection as well as the outside look. I think it's better now to help to drive our future decisions that we are making within our school district. And Jamie, you talk about benefit to students. I think that, aside from maybe a facilities issue, which we can be cognizant of, and make sure it doesn't become a big news thing, that it actually will, in my mind, I feel it would improve the students' learning, because you're taking a critical look at it and making changes. And don't ever doubt the teachers. They know what's going on. And that reflection is incredible. Oh, did I get cut off again? No. Okay, good.
And I just want to add
Got
one
very-
thing. I want to remember that when we talk about staff that participates in this progress, it's not just classroom teachers. And I just want to remember that piece. It's not just the 5th grade classroom teachers. We have related art staff. We have, counseling staff, other staff members that are dearly important to the education of our children that participate in this progress as well. So as we are all, worried about the changing of the language arts curriculum at the elementary level, I understand that. But I just want to remind everyone that there's more people than that. Katie, for example, not to, but Katie was in the music department. So she, that's where she ended up heading up something. I wasn't there when they did it there. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm just trying to make sure we all see the big picture. And Lucy, I have to agree with you. I think any reflection anybody does on any basis improves our teaching.
Reflection should be a normal part of our, teacher evaluation, and that's a normal part of it. So that's not like we're lacking that by any means. Our district that I work for does a program for new teachers called TEAM, and yes, you do need to write a reflection paper, and sometimes it's not such a fun thing to do when you're brand new, but there's so many opportunities for teachers to reflect. And a good teacher does it every day anyway. They think about their day, they look at the big picture and see how it all fits in. I don't necessarily think we need help to reflect by others. And do keep in mind that my other experience in NEASC has been that they like to recruit people. So they're going to visit RSD 30 and they're going to say, oh, Stephanie, would you like to be a NEASC member? And again, that's your right to do that. I suppose you could fit it in. But that also raises a red flag with me as well. It's a congenial thing. It's a collaboration thing. But they're constantly looking for people to do site visits. That's a nonstop thing. I don't love that in the sense that we're going to lose somebody to go on a 2-week-long site visit in Wyoming or wherever else they need to go. Every person is valuable in the building, and I'm the type that says, you know what, I got a job, I'm going to do it. I'm going to focus 200% on that. And that's when the students benefit the best.
Maura?
Yeah, I have like three things. So I agree with what everybody's saying as far as completely see the benefit of the process. I think that with the growth model, it definitely trying to compare the schools and make sure we're aligned is definitely a need in the district. But as Linda said too, like I just feel that there's got to be another way, or there's got to be other ways to be doing that internally without having to drag our schools and districts through something in accreditation that isn't needed or possibly even wanted at the time. So I think Doug mentioned that he's not aware of anything else or any other way for such a model.
Well, what I said is I'm not aware of another organization out there with kind of the name branding and the credibility of NEASC that could do this. To Linda's earlier point, I suppose we could hire a consultant to do something like this, but it wouldn't be kind of assessed against these NEASC standards that kind of have some external credibility. So we would be taking that consultant's product and the idea would be, if we do this, we probably stay in it for the foreseeable future. So there's even cycles that go down the road. And again, we're hearing what all of you are saying, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to start here with this. We know this is not something to just willy-nilly jump into, but we also think it bears some consideration before we just dismiss it and say, oh, we're just going to go back to the high school because that's what we've kind of always done. And looking at our time, I see that we're already an hour in. We've got a ton of other topics to address tonight. Is there enough interest at least for us to maybe try to schedule the NEASC rep, Fran, who we've had a chance to meet with, at a future student achievement meeting or at a future board meeting at a work session, so that, because again,
that was my question, Doug. Like I was concerned, like when are we looking to do an accreditation, and does that fall in line with the fact that we don't have a full strategic plan yet? We don't have the EL program started. So if we are under no gun to get that moving, then I think that having them come in and explain some stuff to us would be really important.
No, I think the only kind of artificial timeline is that if we're not going to do it, we would probably no later than the end of the summer, Deb, don't you think, want to be able to tell the high school that they're going to do it alone? Because right now, based on our even considering this, we've kind of hit the pause button on that, which is fine. There's no like rush or requirement, but we would just like to be able to let the high school folks know, are they doing a standalone school NEASC process, or are they going to be part of an overall district process, which also includes the high school?
And I think Fran would work with us on that too, Doug. If it were, I wouldn't want to go any further out than that. It'll push our timeline a little, but it's not. He's really been very kind about the new administration and the new everything. So I'm not worried about that part.
I can't tell if there are principals for the younger grades on here. I'm sorry, I can't see. But if there are, I'm just wondering if their staff has been asked, or if this has been a discussion with the staff of the elementary level, middle school level, and if so, what is the response?
I don't want to speak for them, or I don't think they've had that a conversation yet, because we wanted to bring it to you first. Because honestly, if you were dead set against it, we weren't gonna put this on their plate at this point. But I think the feedback we got from Tom and from Noel and from Deb Murray, and what they were able to ask Fran, the consultant, was one of your earlier questions about would anything major happen next year with the rollout of this curriculum, and he assured us that it wouldn't, because that's not the way the process would work. So now we think year 2 and even year 3 of that program, they still wouldn't be ready to engage in a process. Then we're probably better off not doing this. Again, I'm of the personal opinion that what a great opportunity to let others see where we are in that process and hear where our folks feel like it's going well, it's going poorly, what they could use support in. I think this would be a great opportunity to do that, but others may see that differently.
Amanda, then Mariah.
Thank you. I would just like to hear from staff if this is something that they are interested in doing, and also based on the website link that you gave us, Doug, it's mostly all high schools that are accredited in Connecticut. I'm looking through, I just went through 10 pages. It's literally all high schools. So I would suggest starting there and asking them, the staff there first.
So Amanda, good point. The district accreditation process is a relatively new one. What they offered in the past was an actual individual school accreditation process for middle schools and elementaries, and very few, probably because of cost, I would think, and how burdensome the old process was, just said no thanks. And I think NEASC realized this was a weakness. So if we entered into this, we would be kind of on the cutting edge of doing this, not just in the state, but in the region. We certainly wouldn't be first, but we would be kind of towards the front of the queue. And again, that may be a reason to do it or a reason not to do it.
I'm just looking, like I went to Middletown Public Schools. Middletown High School has been accredited since 1985, it says on their website. Their last visit was in 2011. And it's just for the high school that's accredited. And I know that they have a huge budget in Middletown. I'm wondering why a town like that with so many schools has not looked into something like that. I don't know that it's needed at that elementary level.
A suggestion was made before about coming before the board and perhaps during a work session. I'd like to move that forward if that's okay, Lindsay, and that we bring it to board, please not at the June meeting, because I think we're
maybe could we look at maybe July or August?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yep.
Mariah's next.
Hi.
We'll close out after that.
Okay. All I wanted to say was, I had my hand raised before. I think it's really going to be valuable to get the opinions of the staff that would actually be participating in this, because we're hearing, a lot from not the teachers that are directly in the classrooms. And I think their input would be valuable, especially with the rollout of the new EL program. I would fear that we might be spreading ourselves too thin. And I don't think once we're in it, I don't think it's something teachers maybe they would be uncomfortable saying that it's too much going on all at once. And I don't know if it's necessarily a priority for us to be one of those cutting edge districts. I think it's our priority to focus on one thing and get that thing done well so we can best serve the students in our district. And that's all.
Deb, can I ask when is the expiration of the current accreditation for the high school? It seems like Brian Falcone was working on this. I know it's almost like a never-ending process. The moment you get accredited, you need to start preparing for the next one.
Yeah, so we were in, when I moved up last April, they had started the process, but with the change in administration, Doug reached out to Fran and they gave us a waiver of another year. And then in the conversations this year about, thinking about the district accreditation, Fran came out, he gave us a walkthrough for just the high school, and then started, to talk a little bit at a superintendent's meeting about the district piece. He's been very kind. I mean, yeah, we need to start. We need to do it regardless. It's not it, but we had it planned in for next year for our visit because they had already given us a 1-year waiver. So our accreditation doesn't expire. They've given us a waiver to keep it current, but we are in the cycle of starting now. Again, those if you have PTSD over the rubrics and stuff, I think those are pretty much gone. I know those were a big piece, in the past, but I don't know, maybe I'm just being naive, but I'm not, even if it's just the high school, I'm not having that daunting feeling that Brian used to bring to our meetings. Do you know what I mean? Because it was every staff meeting, every PD, every time they had people get together. It's not sounding like that to Katie and I. So that's why I'll go whatever way you guys want to go, but I'm not feeling that.
And Jamie, to further, they got so backlogged in the pandemic because they weren't doing any of it. And so even some of the people who didn't ask to be pushed back got pushed back anyway, just because of that. I mean, it's hard to remember, but we're not that far removed from having been in masks and not allowing visitors and all those things. And so they're just kind of spinning back up into this now too. So again, there's no jeopardy for us to lose the accreditation at the high school over us taking a few months to think this through.
So Deb and Katie, you can certainly start the process regardless of whether we choose to do only the high school or the entire district. We wouldn't want to slow you down based on when we make a decision about whether it's a district-wide or high school. You can start the process on your own.
We cannot.
Different process. Is it a different process?
If we do district, we basically get another year because they would need that for us to get everything loaded up. Am I right about that, Doug? The very first visit, they would give us an additional year to do that. And we couldn't be a year ahead of them because all the reflections come out in those areas by school in the report. Like just like the report was just high school, instead of it being this is again my understanding, a 4 or 5 page report on just the high school. It had gone down to about 2 pages, and now it's going down to paragraphs on each school if we do the schools. And I'm not looking to do less work. I think we have to do the same amount of work. It would just be reflecting on professional learning opportunities in the district. Is there something different at Strong that we're not using and could be beneficial to our kids? And we reflect on that as a district. And when you read the report, we say, oh gosh, I wish I had done this. That's the feeling I got out of the discussion we had. Katie, if you have something different about that.
No, I mean,
Deb, does that look, oh, go ahead, Katie. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Lindsay. Just, I do agree with you. And just again, that those paragraphs, it's not looking for, real hard answers. It's identifying strengths. It's identifying areas of weakness that you want to prioritize. And then just the conclusions that the staff makes based on just looking a little bit deeper into the practices in our district.
So just looking at what Deb said, and then we can move on from there because we're looking at 5:30 right now. But what we're saying is that the district-wide accreditation would give us another year to prepare for, as opposed to the high school, which would be in the fall.
Yeah.
Is that a reason that we're looking to do that rather than just having the district accredited, or is there?
No,
I honestly thought it was a good opportunity. Sorry, Doug. I honestly thought it was a good opportunity when he brought it to us. We're a small district, and I think district accreditation, just like high school accreditation, what is accredited, to Jamie's point, what does accreditation really mean? But if D13 is a district accreditation, districtly accredited by NEASC, just like the high schools accredited by NEASC, it seems to hold some weight. To Jamie's point, what that really is not all of, whatever.
And I think we have enough questions and concerns that we could give ahead of time to NEASC to really go through those with the full board, and then we can discuss it and just how the numbers come out, the timelines, the benefits, the drawbacks, and we can work through it as a board on in that space, if that's okay. All right, we will move on to number 7, which has a lot of subsections. So Katie and Deb, I'm sorry you're on again.
No, that's okay. Katie sent you the slide presentation. I hope you had a chance to kind of look through it. I prefer not to share it. I will if somebody hasn't had a chance. So if you want to raise your hand and tell me you'd rather have me put it up on the screen right now, I can do that. I have a copy in front of me, and so Katie and I can kind of just talk through it. Unless somebody really wants me to put it up on the screen.
I can put it up, Deb, if that helps, if you want.
That's fine. That's fine with me too, Lindsay. If you want to share your screen with it, that would be great. So really, these were all questions that we had during budget season and things that you guys had asked for either further information on or clarification on. You can see the list there. We did add some of our own pieces and parts because we thought they were important to bring to you. So we're going to start with, and I'm going to have Katie do the new courses and daily schedule because she is knee deep in scheduling right now. They say it's a fun puzzle. I don't know if they're having that much fun. And so I'm going to have her talk about that, and then we'll talk more about some of the other things. Go ahead, Katie.
So new courses for the 23-24 school year. So our program of studies is always available on the CRHS website. So I included a link there if you were interested. And our learners participated in course registration and making those requests pretty early this year. Strategically, again, we're trying to have students get excited about the possible courses that they could take and help make that decision about coming to CRHS. And then, of course, helping our current CRHS students make their plan over their 4 years that they get to spend with us at the high school. Most of our departments offer more options than what we could run based on how many teachers we have, purely so that, again, we can direct what our courses are towards student interest. So the next few slides in the presentation show what is new in the 23-24 school year. I won't go through them in great detail. If you have any questions, please stop me. Our math department did add another AP option, AP Pre-Calculus. This actually is a combination of Pre-Calc honors and Trig honors, but now the students have that option of receiving the AP credit as well. Our music department added a number of more general music options. So if you're not, say, a band person or a choir person, but you still want music in your life, we have some other options there, including Music in Our Lives, Music Exploration Lab, piano, and music and theater. And as the requests are coming in, some of these courses are running next year, some of them are not. Music and theater, for example, we decided to combine it with our current class of backstage so that we could satisfy more requests and get more students in those courses, and then still get to focus on those areas of interest. And then in our PE department, we're always trying to look at other electives that are going to be interesting to our students. One of the changes that we made that we'll talk about a little bit further on in this presentation is there's a PE 9 requirement for our freshman students. That's where they're getting all of the state testing done, like the mile and the sit and reach and whatnot. But now we're letting students grades 10, 11, and 12 choose from a wide selection of PE electives. New ones we added this year are touch football and net sports. Moving on to our daily schedule for next year, we're making one minor change to our daily schedule that we're hoping is going to have a pretty big impact on providing time for our senior students, more opportunities that are going to be relevant and authentic, and quite honestly, get them out of the building for internships and job shadows. If you click on one minor schedule modification, it does go to what the actual schedule looks like. We just reviewed this with our team leaders this past week, and everyone seems, to be in agreement that this looks like a very viable schedule for us. Basically, one of the main timing changes is just that every day, Monday through Friday, is now going to be on the same timing, period per period. Currently, Mondays are off by a few minutes because of advisory versus X block. So this eliminates that confusion entirely. But the one major change that we made here is that the end of Monday and the end of Tuesday, we are flip-flopping the last two blocks. So basically what that means is Mondays and Thursdays are all going to end with the same class period. Tuesdays and Fridays now are all going to end with the same class period as well. So by flip-flopping and then freezing that last block, our seniors are going to have that opportunity that if they do get an option for an internship or a job shadow or something they want to pursue that they need time outside of our building for, we can guarantee that at least 2 times a week, that time is reserved for that, where our current schedule every day ends on a different block. We also purposely scheduled our career class that all the seniors have to take their first semester during period 3 and period 8 for this purpose. Once students are fulfilling their requirements for the career class, for their capstone presentations, etc., we'll have requirements set in place that students can meet so that they can ideally not be in the building during that block. They're going to be out in our community, out in authentic work experiences, and have that time built into the schedule so we can fully support that without having to have students miss, more class time than they might need to. I'm going to just look at my other slides because I went off course a little bit. Deb, is there anything that you would like to add on that?
No, I think you did a good job. It does work well. We struggled with it, and then all of a sudden, you look at something long enough and we were like, oh, we'll just make it the same. And so this year when they've gone out on internships and some job shadows, they always have to, make up the classes and they might miss their AP class 2 weeks before the AP exam. So we were trying to avoid that for them. And this is a nice step into that to see if we're going to, because the teachers really, when we ask them, they really like the rotating schedule. They like seeing kids at different times of day. So, we'll see how it goes because there will be some freshmen, sophomores, and juniors in period 3 and 8 classes every day, right? So that could cause some other issues, but we're hopeful that this will help get our kids out and involved in the community.
Yeah. And then the only other, oh, I'm sorry, Lucy.
You're muted, Lucy.
Finish up. That's okay. Finish up.
Sure. So just the final section in the schedule slide presentation is just that we're experimenting with more quarter class offerings. This is in hopes of eliminating how many students perhaps are taking study halls, because basically right now our PE and our health classes run on the quarter. They don't run in a full half semester or a full year. So we were trying to just think of what are other ways that if a student takes an extra PE class and now has an extra odd quarter sitting in their schedule, how else can we fill that? So we're experimenting this year with our intro to foods classes and our advanced foods classes, as well as, again, offering more PE options and health courses to see if that's going to help just fill the quarters per a student's schedule. So, we'll see how that works, and we might continue that practice with other elective offerings in the future if we find it successful. And if not, there's always the option of changing those back to full semester courses.
Do you guys want to ask questions on that stuff now and then go on to the end, or you want us to do the whole presentation first?
It's up to you guys.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for pushing the capstone for junior year as someone who's just been living it this past year. Like, I think giving the kids a lot more time. It was a great decision. Thank you.
So
Absolutely.
that's great, Laura. You've led us right into that next little piece, which is the capstone and career exploration plans. So any of you that attended our presentations, I think you saw the value in what we did. This is the first year, for those of you that don't know, that it was a state requirement to have a capstone capstone class, say we would call it whatever we ended up calling it. But we had to have a capstone. So I can't give enough kudos to Matt Thompson. For those of you that know him or don't know him, you will be hearing his name more and more. He's our career counselor, and he's our capstone coordinator. He made this experience real. He gave the opportunity for kids to have a meaningful experience. That's the best way for me to say it. Because, as in anything new, we did hit our bumps in the road. So we have looked already, even though projects were presented last week, we've looked already to see how we can better that for next year. So prior to even them presenting, we had a meeting with the juniors, and we said, here's where you're going to start, because we can't wait to first semester career, more to your point, to do the interest inventories and get some ideas about meaningful opportunities you may want to have. And, do you want to go on an internship? What do you like? What don't you like? So we had that meeting already. The junior advisors are already working with their students to get those contracts in and the advisors done and in a good place to be ready to go. They could do some of their work over the summer if they have a summer job that they like, or their parent has an opportunity for them to go out and do something. They can use some of that information just over the summer, which gives them a lot more time to do that. We're going to move presentations up into the winter. That gives us a couple of things. We won't be scrambling here in the last minute for the couple of kids that said, I'm not going to do it. And we said, yes, you are. And so we can make sure that they get in there and do it. Also to make the portfolios and the reflection pieces, again, to our whole previous conversation, a little more meaningful, and so that they can make some long-range decisions, right? Because the more we saw these presentations, the more adults in the room said, I wish we had had these opportunities or thought about these things before we all went into education or whatever we did. So it was amazing. I mean, some of the capstone projects we saw, there was one young man, sorry, my dog hasn't been fed yet. That's my husband feeding my dog. Some of our presentations, one young man was really like, I'm not doing anything. This is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden he said, wait a minute, I love reptiles. And he has now built a reptile business. He had to figure out how to apply for an LLC, how to do his business license with the town, how to get a tax ID, because it was all self-motivated and self-driven. You know, we saw one young learner. He's not young. He's ready to go out into the world, but he recorded his own album, and he he had everyone listen to it during his presentation. Healthcare, computer science. It was amazing. And you guys will all be invited back again next year. It was a great opportunity to just watch what these young adults are really trying to navigate the world. Katie already talked about the last block of the day will be career. Once they fulfill the things that they need to fulfill, resume writing, a little bit of finances, other skills that are email writing, how do you make a connection? What is amazing to most of us probably is the thing when we asked them what was really the hardest, they said talking on the telephone, because they don't do it anymore, right? So to make that phone call and say, hey, I'd like to know if you're interested in me coming and shadowing you for the day. When I think, Doug, it was in your presentation, one young man was like, I was so nervous to make that phone call. I had to talk to Mr. Thompson about it like 4 times before I made the phone call. And the guy already knew he was calling. Like, we had already made that connection for him. So it was really kind of fun to see. Matt also runs a Lunch and Learn series that is for all grade levels, actually, where professionals come in and talk to students during their lunch. They can be from Medtronic or the healthcare field or any of those things. So they really, it was really a nice beginning, and I think it outweighed Matt's expectations. I think Katie and I were kind of like, all right, let's see what happens. And Matt is a little bit more concrete, sequential, and he blew it out of the water, and it was amazing. So it was just perfect. The one other connection we made, Liza helped us make a connection through the Joe Abate Charitable Foundation they create a thing called Igniting Talent for high school students that really have no idea where their interests lie. It's akin to what Matt was doing with Capstone, but on a much smaller scale. Only 2 students. They only take 2 students at a time. But they work with them as a mentor, and they really find them places that speak to the heart. And these were truly the 2 students that we had do it, truly unmotivated, scared for their future students. And to see the switch in their behaviors and their attitudes, even just about school, once they were interested in something. One girl went to a private investigation firm, and they were like, we get to look at arrest records. We're like, yes, you do. Like, this is important stuff. And just to see the difference in them, if you're interested, we're going to partner with them again, because no matter how many adults are there to mentor kids, it can't hurt to have 2 more people out in the community making these connections. So that website is on there if you guys are interested in that. And that really was a Liza and Katie connection. Somebody brought it to our attention, and then we found out again, our North Branford connection, they've been using them for a couple of years, and they've been doing Capstone for a couple of years. So advisory is a work in progress. As usual, we'd really like to put some of this work, the Capstone work, and make it keep going down levels, down to freshman year. We shouldn't be waiting till freshman year to write a resume or to learn how to write an email or to any of those things. So as we build our advisory program down, a lot of these things will get pushed further. Fitz is working on mini lessons to assist with the transition from 9th grade to 10th grade. 8th grade to 9th grade. And he's been working on that. And Katie and I are going to get with him to make sure we cover those things that all the kids are worried about coming up. And then, like we said, those semester 2 juniors will be working with Mr. Thompson. Another reason for us moving it up is so that Matt frees up his time second half of the year to start again with those juniors. We spent some time at a faculty meeting brainstorming the soft skills we need to be successful in life. And so we've identified those areas of focus, which include collaboration, communication. I mean, none of these are new to any of us, but especially coming out of the pandemic, we're a little bit worried about their ability to effectively communicate, their self-awareness, how to use a cell phone correctly, when, not where, but when to use it correctly. So those are the soft skills we've identified, and we want to build that into a meaningful advisory instead of just lessons that may or may not have meaning for them. The last thing I want to talk about is we have partnered with the Mastery Transcript Consortium, and they have the ability, we had seen this when we visited the Met School. I don't think they use MTC, but for learners to build their own learning record. So the capstone is a perfect example. We pass or fail kids on capstone. It's a graduation requirement. It's literally pass fail. But for those of you that saw the presentations, I don't think you can capture what some of them did in a pass fail, right? So what can they do? What can they show they can do? What can they prove they can do? And they can build a learner record. And you can look at the website when you get a chance. I'm not going to prolong this any longer than we have to. But kids can build their learner record to show and showcase what they can do. And it will go alongside with our regular old transcript with their grades on it, for colleges. But this is another piece of information to, I do too, Linda, to give to colleges, to give to the workplace, to say, I have these skills to do this and I have proof of it. It's almost like an electronic portfolio. And it works. And that was one of the things we brought it up with the team leaders yesterday. And they were like, well, what do we have to do? I said, nothing. This is the learner's record. They will keep track. They will know what they can and can show what they learn. So it's a pretty interesting piece for us to start putting in. It's actually on the last page, which I didn't know Katie put that picture in there. It's on the last page of the slideshow. And that's just the beginning. We're going to pilot it a little next year, see who it works for, who it doesn't work for. I'll give one example. We have a young lady going to Scotland for school this year. I don't think they were interested in a regular transcript at all. They looked at it, but they had already applied and gotten in before final grades were done. She had to more build a competency learner record and tell them who she was and why she wanted to go there and what she could do and what she could contribute. This gives us a way to quantify it. So that's our little spiel. I think we covered mostly everything, but if you guys have some questions, or if this is going too long and you want to send us questions in a Google Doc or something, we could do that as well.
Yeah, I think it's fabulous that administration is present for those capstone. Really kind of puts their feet to the fire a little bit, but also, having a presence in that building, knowing that you're caring about their progress from the time they enter that building, and they're proud to display that. And I really appreciate you being there, both of you, for that.
Thank you. It was a great day. More? You took your hand down, but you're still on mute, More.
Sorry, thank you. I also was going to say that I appreciate that you guys are really focusing on the meaningful advisories. That's been a huge thing for me too. It's a great opportunity, a good time to do a lot of opportunity for that. And I just had a question as far as the added courses. I think that it's great to see new ones. I know my daughter specifically loves seeing the piano, but I just wondered your thoughts of adding more STEM classes. I know there was a lot of music, it seemed kind of music heavy. I know it was for people who are not into band and chorus to try to get them involved. And I saw some sports and some math, but I just wondered what your thoughts were of adding some more STEM opportunities.
Go ahead, Katie. No, no, we agree with you. And it comes out of really the teachers talking to the kids. For example, we're going to bring one to you next year. The kids have been asking for a basic economics course, which actually is a social science and falls under our social studies department, our history department, which is interesting. So we want to get more from the kids about what they want. It waxes and wanes. It's very weird. Because of numbers and because of offerings, like 1 year we'll have, 30 kids wanting intro to engineering. And then the next year there's not 30. So yes, Maura, to your question, I would love to look for more and get the interest. I think we really have to get the student input for that too.
I agree. And the only thing I would add to that is in STEM, there were a few course offerings this year that we combined levels 1 and 2. So for example, forensics 1 and 2, robotics 1 and 2, where say if we had just run the 1 level or the secondary level, numbers wouldn't have been high enough to be able to justify that course running. But because of our teachers' flexibility and ability to, really just modify what they're doing for those different levels in that one classroom, we're able to offer those offerings that perhaps in past years wouldn't have run purely because of numbers.
Okay, and I just want to ask too. I apologize because I haven't had a chance to look at the whole catalog. So, has the financial literacy been added to the curriculum or for the offerings at the high school?
It was not added for this year because we add course offerings, you know, at the beginning of the process. So November or October, November, state legislation and the idea that this is definitely a priority of everyone's will have us putting it back in for course offerings this coming fall for the following year. We do have a grant and we're running a Ramsey course. You might have seen that Parent Square that went home, where students can access just modules. We're giving them credit if they complete a certain number of modules independently. And I know that's not the best for everybody, but that was there as an option this year. But I believe the state is going to go that way and I mean, not that I don't think we should, but I think the state's going to have everyone do it. And that will be a requirement starting next year. I don't know who they'll require it for, starting with the freshman class or whatever, but it will be put back in there. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we move on? Thank you. I'm not exactly sure where we are, though. That was a lot of things put together. So we at 7B, C, D, or in the agenda?
Yeah,
I did all of mine. I think Cheryl's next.
Yeah, you're on May
Yeah,
right
Cheryl
now.
will be
Okay,
next.
we're on 8. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you an update on our electives. We had our students, the memorial students. So we got all our students from the incoming 6th, incoming 7th, incoming 8th. We gave them the option to sign up for their electives, and we've already got them plugged into classes. We have had enough seats. I was a little bit worried that I was going to have too many kids wanting one course. But overall, we got, I want to say like 99.9% of our students got into their first choice. So we had them rank their options for each quarter. And we're in a really good place, and I'm excited for it for next year. Any questions for me?
Actually, I do have a question. I'm not sure how to put it together. How many students would you say took advantage of that were eligible for these electives, took advantage of it as opposed to the study hall?
So the majority of students did sign up for a course, but we did have more than I expected stay in study halls. And I'm not really sure why at this point, but it's far less than students who were in it before. And some students decided because they could choose for each quarter. So they might say quarter 1, my option would be, say it was Young Chefs. I don't want to do that, so I'll take study hall for that. But then the second quarter, it might have been construction time, and then they took that. So there was a lot of flexibility. I do think that potentially students, once they start hearing about what's going on in the classes, we may see students try to join in, which as long as I have the seats, absolutely they're in.
Now, when you offer the electives, do you just offer one per quarter, or are they all offered per quarter? How does that work?
It's one per quarter.
Sorry,
because
I froze.
Oh, it's one per quarter because they're doing it as they're one of the related arts teachers are doing it. Like say Amy Schaefer, she's teaching a quarter of 6th grade, a quarter of 7th grade, a quarter of 8th grade art. And so her 4th quarter, she will then teach this elective to the students. Are you frozen again, Lucy, I think?
Cheryl, did you, and I'm sorry if I missed it, so I was coming in and out. It looks like we're going to have a storm, so the internet's all going crazy.
Yeah.
Did we take a look at limiting how many study halls the kids are taking? Are we able to not allow them to load up with, say, 6 a week?
Yes, they cannot do that, but they can have their 3 a week if they chose not to sign up for anything.
Okay.
I'm sorry. All of a sudden everybody froze. And I couldn't get back on. And now I can't remember what my question.
Did you hear me, Lucy, or not?
No, I didn't hear. I didn't hear.
Okay. And so I'll repeat it. It's no problem. So it's a different offering each quarter other than with Carolyn LaRosa, who's doing it
Oh.
one course of enrichment. But
Look at that.
she's frozen again or something. Can you hear me, Lucy? No.
Cheryl, have we communicated to parents? Oops, sorry. My husband just let my dogs in. It's like a Greyhound track. Have we looked at talking to the parents and letting them know how this is going to work, how the schedule is going to work? I know that we sent out the electives, but I didn't know if parents were up to date that the kids were going to be coming home with different things than past years.
Not at this point, because we're still, we just finished getting them plugged in. And then there are still some potential changes depending upon students with specific needs that they might, like our schedules are not done until the end of the summer, really. But we definitely will communicate with parents.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has any questions for Cheryl while she's on the tropical island over there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got cut off again. Just if you can just email a quick response, because
I'll send you an email, Lucy.
Yeah, I'm really having trouble with my computer for
Yeah.
some. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, Cheryl, if you're good, we'll move on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Cheryl. All right, 9, EL Education Professional Development Update. So this was a few board members had asked that we give an update or get an update on how the professional development rollout is going with the EL program and how the spring went and how we anticipate any summer PD and whether we're able to expand that to offer some, at least maybe even possibly to the team leads within each group or 1 or 2 teachers to give them that extra boost during the summer if they want it. So I don't know if anyone had an update on that, but Stephanie's shaking her head, so.
Yes, I will give an update.
Okay.
So we did have our K through 5 professional development that was provided by Better Lesson, who is the partner of Open Up that does all of the professional development. We had that last week on Tuesday. We invited all of our teachers, K through 5. We had our teacher assistants there, our special education teachers, our interventionists, our OTs and PTs, some of our SLPs. And it was virtual because it was such a large group. And just because of, they need time to kind of prepare everything. So that was the best we could do. But what I will say is prior to having the PD, I had a lot of discussion with the reps of Better Lesson to really help them understand what our coaches had already been working on with all of the teachers and the TAs during their recent PLCs, and just so that Better Lesson wasn't repeating anything that the teachers already knew. There was quite a technology issue, which we had dealt with, or we thought we had dealt with prior to this, but everybody kind of got on the PD. And I will say, for the most part, it went very well. Unfortunately, I know that there was one group, our K through 5 teachers and special ed teachers, who did not receive the professional development that I was hoping that they would get. And I have been in contact with the rep because of that. I did express my concerns and my disappointments and frustrations with it. And I will happily say that we are getting a $2,500 refund for the PD because it wasn't what we had hoped for and what we had talked about. But I will say the other sessions, I was in a session with the TAs, with the K through 2 TAs and interventionists, and I felt that it was very appropriate based on their level of knowledge of the program. I know that the 3 through 5 teachers and special education teachers got a really good professional development. The leader of that one kind of knew she was asking a lot of questions to kind of know what the level of understanding was of that audience. And she really spent a lot of time diving deep, giving them a lot of really good resources. And then I also heard feedback from the 3 through 5 TAs and interventionists that was really positive for them as well. So since then, since last week, what I did was I obtained all of the recordings for all 4 of those sessions, all of the slide decks, all of the notes. I put them on a Google Classroom, which I invited all of those individuals to join. And Better Lesson also has given us access to a lot of other really good PD that teachers can spend, asynchronous time on learning from. And it's really, there's a wide range of resources. I mean, it goes all the way from providing lesson synthesis to really going into skills block, and they can make it as specific as they want to, or they can look at as specifically as they want to, or they can look at just a general broad overview. So I kind of put all of this information on a Google Classroom for teachers. And myself and the coaches are going to continue to look through all of the resources that we've been provided with to kind of really pick out the stuff that we feel is going to be really beneficial to them, because when you look at it, there's a lot on there. So we don't want to overwhelm them. The coaches are going to continue their training and helping the teachers to prepare for the upcoming school year. I did have the opportunity, based on our last meeting that we had, I did meet with all of the K-2 teachers to kind of have a conversation about just their feelings and their thoughts and what they, what they're hoping for next year. And all of them, they feel, I got the consensus that they're feeling a little bit better after last week's PD. Again, the K-2 didn't have a great experience, but we did talk about that, and we did talk about resources that were going to be shared out with them. I know that our coaches are going to come in over the summer to do a little bit of work. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to look at the modules that the teams are going to focus on next year, and they're going to really figure out what standards are not covered in those modules to kind of make a plan for how to cover the rest of the standards for the rest of that school year. We are still going forward with our professional learning. We're going to allow the teachers, any time that they spend over the summer on professional development for this program, or really for anything else, they can log those hours towards the 2 June flex days at the end of next school year. We've already sent all of that information out to the teachers so that they are aware. And then we are kind of going to get some feedback to figure out what the needs are going to be for August. And we are going to provide PD again in August for them. But as of this time, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, because we need to see how much learning is done. So we're kind of coming up with a plan with the coaches to figure out how to gain that feedback before they come back, so that we can make sure that the PD that they're provided with in August is beneficial to what they need at that time. Because we do know that some teachers are going to spend, and they've already vocalized it to us, they are going to spend a lot of time continuing to learn and go through this program just to be really confident and ready and prepared. And we just want to make sure that whatever PD they are being given in August is something that's going to be beneficial and effective to them. So that's where we're at. That's where we've gotten in the last month. Does anybody have any questions?
Have you had any feedback from either of the 3 elementary schools, whether the current approaches at each school are changing how EL is being rolled out, or is it making things more cohesive?
I think they're in a better place. I will say, at first it was a little, we did get some feedback about, I would say a mixture of feedback. We got some teachers that were eager and ready, and then obviously we had some that were nervous, and we still do have some. I spoke to 2 kindergarten teachers recently who are feeling a little overwhelmed, but they also have not had as much time with their coach because of SBAC testing and everything like that. They will have time, but they just haven't had as much time yet to go through some things. I will say one thing I forgot to mention is, out of my conversations with the K-2 teachers, I have been in touch with a teacher from Massachusetts that I spoke to back in February before we really made a decision on this program. That teacher has offered to Zoom with some of our teachers as well, to talk to them, at any point over the summer, just to kind of help them out a little bit. I know a lot of the questions I got the last couple of weeks was about the beginning of the year and just how do they set up their classroom and what materials do they need to have ready. They just want to be prepared. And I also put them in touch with my daughter's kindergarten teacher because they've been doing this program as well. So those 3 kindergarten teachers are also, we're in the process of setting some time up for them to also speak to some of the teachers in our district. But I will say that the teachers have actually all together decided on which 2 modules they want to do next year. And they looked at those themes and they discussed it, and together, no matter what school they're at, they decided which modules they wanted to do because they realized that they were already topics that they cover in kindergarten. So they felt comfortable with that content. And I also will say that out of our conversations, we kind of determined that starting modules first is actually the better way to go because of the way that the routines and the procedures and the structures and everything are in place in module 1, the module lessons. It's going to really help them when they're rolling out the skills block. So we have had some kind of some discussions that have helped us to be a little bit more reflective and helped us to really think about how to maybe change some things. And I also think that they are going to spend we're probably looking at starting really diving into module 1, probably closer to the end of September, beginning of October, so that they can focus on maybe doing some benchmark assessments when the students come back, really trying to figure out where their needs are at that time so that they can really pinpoint exactly where they need to start with the kids when they come in. So I think we're in a better place. I think with every day that we talk a little bit more about it, that they spend time with the coaches a little bit more, that they have time to work together and really look at the program a little bit more, they're feeling a little bit more comfortable. And I'm just trying to make sure that if they, want somebody else to speak to, we're trying to make those connections as best we can so that they have somebody to kind of go to who has experience with this.
I'm not sure if I missed this part, but are we making sure that the grade levels and the teachers in the different schools are collaborating and bouncing ideas off of each other? And I didn't hear that, but I know you probably insinuated it, but I think it's important to say.
Yes, so that's one thing when and it's hard right now because they don't have like common time to kind of, sit and chat with one another. So what we're doing is they're having those conversations with the instructional coaches at the building, and then the instructional coaches are speaking to each other about what their teachers are saying, and everybody seems to, based on grade level, everybody seems to be on the same page. Kindergarten teachers all agreed that modules 1 and 2 make sense to them because they already work on weather and they already work on engineering and toys of play. Grade 1 already also decided they wanted to do 1 and 2 because, again, those are 2 themes that they've already been working on in their classrooms that they feel comfortable with. And grade 2 is they decided on modules 1 and 3. And again, because they felt that those themes are things that they already do. And so once those teams at separate buildings had those conversations, those coaches came together and said, this is what, we discussed. And they were all pretty much in agreement before, as they came together, they all kind of agreed on the same thing already. So those conversations are happening, and they're going to continue to happen next year as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I think the only other question I have is, how the rollout works with the 5th grade and that gap between for the professional development of the kids that are starting stuff now and then heading off into the to 6th, but also the 4th graders coming into the 5th and the structural changes there. Are there any bumps in the road that you've come across with that at this point with the rollout?
Not yet. I do know that Noelle has been working on looking at scheduling for that. And I think one of the things that they're also waiting for is to fill that position to kind of see what happens with that. But I do know that Noelle has been looking at the schedule. She's been talking to the 5th grade team to kind of figure out, because it is going to look a little bit different at 5th grade, based on their scheduling and their setup. So she has been working on that, looking at the schedule and trying to figure it out. So it is a work in progress, but we plan to hopefully have that all settled and figured out before they leave for summer break.
So the classrooms could not, they might not switch next year. Is that?
That I don't know.
Okay, so we haven't yet figured out how fifth grade will be structured.
I have not heard anything. No, not yet.
Yeah, she's not made a final decision. To Stephanie's point, she's waiting to see the vacancy where it gets filled, either internally or externally. And she's also taking this program into consideration because I'm not sure the current model fits perfectly with this.
With the
but-
changing grade, with the changing subjects during the day?
Well, not just so much changing subjects, but having one teacher focus on one subject only and working more like middle school or high school, essentially, which is very different than what they come out of fourth grade with at Memorial or Lyman. But I don't know that it's going to be the extreme of, in fact, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the extreme of every teacher teaches all the subjects in fifth grade. I think it's going to probably be something in between those extremes, but I don't want to speak for Noelle. I know she's still working with that team on that process.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. If we're going to bring something back or bring that back to the full board, is to have a discussion about how fifth grade is going to be structured, if it is going to change significantly for next year, and how that affects everything. So I guess we can wait and see, we can add it wherever we need to. So if you're okay with that. Anyone else have any questions about the professional development for the EL program? No hands up? Okay. We will move on to this one. Should be quick, just a quick update on the summer enrichment grant. Stephanie, do you have an update on that? I'm not sure if it was Liza.
That's me.
There she is.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Again, so on May 11th, I got an email from the state. Unfortunately, we did not get the enrichment grant. They said there were over 300 applications for that. I had mentioned previously that that was the trend, and I hoped that that wouldn't be the case, but unfortunately it is. So therefore, I am looking at possibly some enrichment opportunities that could be in an after-school space for next school year. And then I would like to have an enrichment camp program possibly for next summer. I've seen several different ways that this can happen. And I know that last time you mentioned that you would like to see something at the middle school level. So now that we are not tied to this actual grant funds, we can see about doing something at the middle school level, and we can see about actually having some sort of pay option. I know that there was this in the past in some of the enrichment camp, that there could be a pay option with some scholarships available if we are not able to have that for next summer based on budgetary constraints. But that is something that I would definitely like to pursue.
Okay, so to reiterate on that one, with that grant denial, we're going to be looking into next year for possibly a summer enrichment for the middle school, but not this year, correct?
Correct.
Just to put in your, in your planner for next year, if we partner with a organization and we help them fill out the grant or whatever, the application, I was a reader on those grants. I didn't do ours. But the odds of getting it are much better. In general, they're reticent to give it to school districts. They're trying to give it to community organizations. And so if we found an organization that wants to run a program that we're interested in and we partner with them, it has a higher, better odds of getting funded.
Great to know. Thank you so much. I will definitely look into that.
Okay, so I think that's all we have on that one. And always something the most complicated or confusing one last, the one-track model discussion. So I had asked this at the request of some board members to talk about the one-track model that we had discussed back, the former board had discussed back in 2019, and how we are working towards making sure that all of these kids are on the same track when it comes to curriculum and approach. And I don't know if, Amanda, you want to speak on it first, or if you want Doug to give an overview.
I'd love to hear an overview first and then go from there.
Okay.
Well, I will start, and I invited Tom to join, and Deb has been a trooper and hung in here with us because they have the history at the principal level at elementary. And actually, at your prompting, Lindsay, you may not remember saying this, but you encouraged me to go back and read through a lot of these minutes, and I have. And I would like to say my read of the minutes from December of 18 and January of 19 actually leaves me more confused about what the actual direction that the board was going and the district was going in this. Best I can tell, the decision was mirrored with and tied to obviously the hope to close the school and to have all grade levels under one roof. And from what I read, there was a specific desire to take about 4 years. It looked like 23. This year actually was the year they felt it would take to get everything kind of into one place. And also a deliberate effort not to abandon practices that had been done at other schools and on other campuses right away, especially those identified with ID and HOT. In fact, what I read was a deliberate effort to import some of those practices to other schools in the district. And so I think where we find ourselves now is a situation where, and I put this in an email to some of you board members anyway, and some of you were copied on it earlier in the week. From what was described to me as what was happening prior to these decisions as to what's happening now, there's a stark contrast in terms of that. But what's complicated this is there was also the grade level move of grade 6 to Strong, and as I understand it, grade 3 from Brewster to Memorial that happened in the middle of all of this. And so I think from my perspective, what I've seen, and of course there was a pandemic in the middle of all of this, I do believe we have one program and one curriculum. I don't see any evidence of that. But there have been some concern raised, I think, about approaches. And I think that's where things get a little bit more difficult to describe, because I don't believe a program necessarily describes the specific approach. And we have this, it seemed like from the board, and again, several of you were on the board back then, I don't know how good your memories are, but from the minutes, that they did not want to abandon many of the practices that were going on at Strong, at Memorial, at Lyman, specifically in what was the integrated day program. And so I don't know, Tom or Deb, if you want to add anything to that or correct me in anything on that in terms of what was and what is, but I do think there's been enough questioning around this over the last 12 to 18 months that I feel like we need to be able to kind of describe this to folks in a way that they don't feel like anyone is doing anything that wasn't intended or that isn't good for children.
No, I think that's a pretty, good synopsis of, kind of where, to the best of my recollection, we were, back in 2018, 19. And, some of that conversation was, centered a little bit around, the portrait of the citizen work at that time, and, something to bear in mind too, just, as Doug alluded to, I think a lot of these conversations did have, the thought that, another school would be closing and kind of a reconfiguration lens to it. Then obviously that hasn't happened as of yet. And certainly in the midst of some of these conversations and changes, the pandemic really, for like interfered with lots of things, to say the least. So no, that is I think a pretty good summation. I would also say in terms of kind of moving to the one track approach, and actually I had to go back and the years start to blend together after a while. Part of that conversation, discussion, and shift, if you will, was included 5th and 6th grade and the middle school, because Historically, the tracks, if you will, integrated day and contemporary, were K-8. And prior to, if memory serves me, even through 2019, 2020, don't quote me in the exact year, we still had those track pathways for integrated day and contemporary through 8th grade. They look a little different, building to building based on structures and so forth. But when, if you recall, I believe it was in 2021, that 6th grade moved, from Memorial to Strong, and then 3rd grade transitioned over to Memorial from Brewster. And that was also the time when, the K-8 distinction really kind of also, faded out. So that was a component too of the one, kind of track thinking. That helps to clarify what Doug shared.
And I agree with Tom. Some of the crux of the issue was that at Memorial and at Strong, you had both programs running at the same time. It wasn't, and the multi-age piece would cause a little bit of differences, and for the good or bad, you know what I mean? And so I think we would just think it was trying to be streamlined at the time. And then to Tom's point, those two moves happened thinking we were coming out of COVID in a regular fashion that year, and we did not, clearly. And so that's kind of where we ended and where we stand today. It was meant to align like curriculum, right, Tom? Curriculum and where, where we were going with things. But the idea, to Doug's point of reading the minutes, was we wanted to integrate the best of both worlds, is what I remember it being dubbed as. And we never got to the planning of that due to circumstances clearly beyond our control.
I do remember this not only as starting on the board in 2019, but also prior to that for 10 years working in the district and being on the other end. And it was dubbed the best of both worlds. I totally agree with you. I think it was meant to tie in, and of course, above all else, I mean, you can't guarantee that kids are going to get the same experiences across schools with different teachers. But we wholeheartedly talked extensively of how it was supposed to be a one track. And by one track meant all kids in each grades were getting similar experiences. Enrichment, I know that the arts was a huge thing. They have been adopted over at Brewster more. I know they're doing assemblies now that they weren't doing before. So there was already this work being started as far as merging what was going on in one school was going on in another school. Somewhere it seems that either the message or the focus was stopped. And again, yes, we had COVID, but I mean, that's, to me, I feel that as years go on now past COVID, we can't really use that anymore because we've had time to refocus, and we've had time knowing that we're still, this is what this district's doing. I think that the children who, when I taught at Brewster, when they were in 3rd grade, we had 3rd grade there and went through the changes, and we heard so much from parents about how upset they were about their children moving to 3rd because they were still really young and they were getting up earlier now, and the other 3rd graders at the other school didn't have to do that. We kept telling them at every meeting that, we understand, we hear you, but it's because of this one track. It's because of our goal. It's because we will get the other 3rd graders over here. We're going to be aligning. And I just feel that we're at a point now where the community is tired of hearing that and not seeing it.
I would fully agree with everything that Maura just said. As a parent of a 4th grader now, but a 3rd grader last year, who at 8 years old was getting up an hour and a half earlier than she needed to. Her peers are starting school an hour later. I've always heard it's this one track, even before she started school. it was one track is going to happen. We're going to close the school. We're going to do this. And a lot of people are hearing the same thing over and over, and they're finally getting fed up. And the enrichment, I don't want to say enrichment, but just the opportunities that the children have based on what we saw today, even on the field trip information, is so far off. It's not equal in any sense. I have a fourth grader who has only been on field trips in kindergarten and never again. It's not equal. It's not fair. We need to have these kids together. If we're going to say that we are one track, all the third graders and fourth graders, let's bring them all together, or we have to figure out a way to make it more equal, because Memorial, to me, is an elementary school. It is not a middle school. These kids are 8 and 9 years old running on middle school schedule, and I don't think that's fair anymore.
I also wanted to add too, I think, because we brought this up, I think it was just, well, it wasn't just Amanda and I, but we were the parents of younger kids too, or people who have been witnessing this and seeing it for a while. But we were adamant that we did not want to see school choice continue through this year. And my argument to that, having also been a teacher who had to go through years of school choice where the obscene amount of competition that had to happen between the two elementary schools was absolutely ridiculous, what it's done to the towns and the teachers and the parents and the kids. But I also felt that if we are two schools who truly are in the process of one track and one curriculum and aligned, then what are we actually having people choose? I just didn't understand why we're still offering school choice. And I think that because we are still offering school choice, which we on the board have been asking over and over again to eliminate, then we are under this assumption that there is a major difference in both schools, so much so that parents have a lot to choose between. So I think also, I know, and Doug, we are all in agreement that it probably won't be removed until we do figure out the school reconfigurations. But in the meantime, because this is now progressing years and years later, I think the number one first thing for us to do is to figure out this year how to remove the school choice, and also how to figure out how we are going to make the schools fair with grade levels.
I think the hard part too, when we're looking at the one track in COVID, and I hear what Doug's saying, because I asked you to go through those minutes. I think what we're lacking to kind of look at, from what you said, was that, yeah, a program was never developed. It was instructed that a program be developed to go along with that one track program. And that's kind of where it was left. So I feel like if we were going to stray away from developing that one track program, there should have been direction, as opposed to parents just waiting for every COVID restriction to go away for this one program to start. And it muddles with a new strategic plan. And what happens is you end up having parents who are more confused than we could possibly imagine, because they're not keeping up to date with certain things, and they give up because they think, well, this is how it was then. COVID's gone. This is, it's not there anymore. We're not talking about a one track where my kids are in different grade levels. Like, we have parents that are really concerned and want to change their kids to different schools next year because they think they're going to get different experiences. And we don't want that. I don't think any one of us wants that, from teachers to administrators to the board. And we just want to find a way to make sure that the staff has what they need in order to make things equal. We want to make sure that the administration has that. And we just want clear communication that shows that this is where we're going. And we want to make sure that all these schools are offering the same experiences and the same, I even want to say the same approach, because I feel that different approaches is not going to help quell the division, and I don't think it'll help us further getting all these kids into one school, or at least the grade levels together.
Certainly, I think it's all a very powerful argument for unifying in a building, but certainly it's going to be a ways off. And I can empathize too with building and administrators. We have 3 now basically that need to communicate more. And it's hard to get out of a little bit of autopilot mode, and please don't take that in a bad way. There's so many moving parts, you get used to doing things a certain way, and you want to continue that because, it's normalcy, it's what the students are expecting. But yeah, greater communication would be wonderful, and anything that we can do to just try. I mean, just the field trip issue alone is one small thing. Got to unify these kids. I mean, short of going back to a community school and saying Middlefield kids go to Lyman as of now, that's an option on the table,
Yeah, I would just like to
Looks like we lost Amanda on that one. She may pop back in. Is there anyone else that has any questions, comments, concerns on this issue? Amanda's back. Linda, anything?
Sorry, I pushed the button when I was talking and it logged me out. I wanted to echo what Maura said about school choice. I understand that Lyman has a lot of the hot school approach that is still being used in their school. And I think that's great. And I think it's something that could be utilized in all of the schools in a certain way. I think it's something that they should collaborate on and bring it into all three of the elementary schools, because I do hear a lot of great things about it. And I think it could be very helpful for a lot of children. But I again, don't understand why there's a school choice, because it does give that impression that there's completely different things going on in our elementary schools. And we shouldn't give that impression, because we're supposed to be one district, one track, one community, right? So I really would love to see it removed. I've been saying it for the past year now, and it's gone nowhere. And I really like that. And yeah, that's all I can remember, because I got myself sidetracked. But that's it. I just wanted to say, like, we need to move forward. We need to bring these kids together. We need to make it equal, especially if the memorial expansion project doesn't pan out, if the voters in our towns don't have an appetite for a project of that magnitude and cost. In the meantime, we really need to address the situation, especially with the grade configurations in the elementary schools.
So I know we could all probably talk about it for a good chunk of time. I don't know if Doug, if you have anything you want to say back to that before we end, but I just want to say I think we probably should bring this back to the full board. It's an important discussion to have there.
No, I think that's right. And again, I've had a lot of conversations with Tom that have been very helpful for me, and I appreciate him being here, hanging in with us till 6:45, and Deb as well. It's interesting. In some ways, it's been like almost 5 years now, 4.5 years now since some of these minutes I read. And I feel like we're still in the same place. And that's not an indictment of myself or the current board or the previous board. Again, we had the pandemic, but it's two things. It was a grade configuration capital utilization process that was kind of happening on its own. And then there was a discussion around what learning should look like in the district. And the attempt was to marry those two into one place. And to Amanda's point and to others, it might be years, even if we get consensus and agreement in funding for the capital side of what we're going to do to get all the grade levels under one roof in some form or fashion. So then I think the question remains, like, what do we do between now and then? Do we make one shift now in anticipation of that move, or do we just hunker down for the next few years? I don't have a strong feeling on that, but I think all of your points are valid. I do have to say, it is important to understand from my perspective, and I don't want to speak for Deb or for Tom or for any principal out there, quite frankly, to try to operate 3 schools as if they were one school is not easy. And these guys, they talk together all the time. And that's why I put in my email, I don't think it looks anything like it looked like before I got here. I also don't think we should assume that when you have different groups of teachers that are in buildings, that it's all going to look the same way, because a lot of work in classrooms is still done independently by teachers. And I don't think we want to take that away. and make this like a cookie cutter approach to everything. And so I think that's what our principals have to balance. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, Tom, or not, but like, I know we're running out of time, but like, I don't know how much of this is like the district push or even the administration push. It's like being responsive to the gifts and talents and kind of cultures that reside within buildings. And that's what I saw in the minutes of those board meetings. There wasn't an expectation that any of that would change overnight or even soon. That would be kind of damaging to do that. I don't know. Tom, am I even saying that properly?
I think the minutes reflect that.
Can I
that
say
in-
something too, and just in response to what you just said too, Doug? Because I'm glad actually Tom's here, and as Deb, I'm not sure if Cheryl's still here, but I'd really like for you guys to please spread this message to the other principals that aren't joining us today, and also for the staff for that matter. No one on the board, either in this committee or on the full board, is questioning anything or having any issue with any administration or teacher. In fact, we wholeheartedly support you guys. We know the hard work that you do. We know the day to day, and we appreciate you 100%. And I just think it's really important for us as a board. And again, I think I am speaking for the entire board when I say that. And it's really important for us, for you guys to hear that, because I feel that our words and our frustration keep getting turned around and twisted so that it is seeming like we are having issue with principals or teachers or functionings of buildings, which we are not having issue with. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed in this conversation right now, because having been a board member, and maybe Jamie and Lucy are the only other board members with me here, maybe can verify this, but I know for a fact, having been someone who interviewed for this position, Doug, this conversation happened over and over again in our interview process. We explained where we were as a district and where we wanted to go. So it baffles me that I'm listening to this conversation as if it's happening for the first time, or that reviewing minutes 5 years ago only just happened right now. So I'm sorry, but I'm a little bit upset about where this conversation is going at the moment, because really there is no issue with administration or teachers or buildings or not understanding how difficult it is with what they're trying to do. We understand that. That's why as a board, we are trying desperately to align them and to help them by reconfiguring buildings. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well,
Linda?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I see the hand. Sorry, Linda. Go ahead.
No, just a thought that I had a minute or two ago was that, it may behoove the leadership team to develop a 3-column conversation around here's what we do as Region RSD 13. Here's what we do. But here are things that, it's kind of this idea of what is expected, what is accepted, and what is appropriate. Because you're right, in my opinion, you can't be lockstep from building to building to building. But everything that I'm hearing, it sounds like we don't have, and maybe it's there and I'm just unaware of it, we don't have a framework or a fully fledged out thought about, well, this is what's non-negotiable across the board. This is what all students need to experience, but it could happen in one way or another. And then here's the column that is totally within, whether it's a school or a classroom's purview. Because I think as we go back and forth across those different domains, I think that's where there's a misunderstanding, not as in a mistake, but just that people have different understandings of what is our instructional framework, what is a non-negotiable, and what is one of those things that's left up to site-based or classroom-based.
Yeah, no, if I may, I appreciate the points that have been made. I certainly agree with Doug. Every building that I've been part of in large districts, small districts, as a teacher, you do have, different groups of people, different staff and different cultures. And, that certainly can inform, some of the things that happen within a school. I just want to say that, in terms of, for me, the commonality starts with your curriculum. And in my time, we are more aligned in terms of our curriculum than we've ever been. And truthfully, yes, the buildings are structured a little bit differently, you know, and again, that's a little bit of the history of, you know, small schools, different programs, approaches, and so forth. You know, but even to the fact that, you know, we are no longer multi-age classrooms, because multi-age classrooms just by definition are going to have a somewhat of a different approach to how to deliver that curriculum, because you have multiple grades of learners in those rooms. So, you know, for me, I think it's, you know, at least what I'm hearing is it's more than maybe the experiences that all learners are receiving that are not necessarily specific to the curriculum, because really in terms of curriculum, in terms of common assessments, you know, we are more in sync at the elementary level really than we've ever been, you know, through my time here. So, and I think that's a benefit because it is a common language. So to me, that's where it starts. And I think certainly the feedback that we're receiving about some of those things, those practices and strategies, you know, those are certainly things that we as, you know, a leadership team, you know, have the ability to work together and more closely on. And we hear you on that, you know, and yeah, even in having this conversation and, you know, some of the issues that have arisen, you know, like, and maybe because of, you know, the kindergarten component of it, you know, I've always thought, you know, a little more of the Lyman Brewster conversation and, you know, and looking at some of the things that have happened at Brewster, I think Maura, you may have alluded to, you know, just some of the practices that have been incorporated into Brewster, you know, in Deb's time with assemblies and some of the teaching hours residencies, the additional experiences that are, you know, beyond the curriculum, enhance the curriculum, enhance the learning experience. That has been a significant change since 2018-19 compared to when I started in 2012, you know, just some of those shifts. So, you know, the feedback is received, and I think there's a lot of potential here. But I do think there's more commonality too, and I think the curriculum really is an essential piece. Even the shift to, you know, kind of the EL, you know, program and materials, you know, is certainly a K-5, pre-K-5, you know, initiative. So I don't want it to sound like that, you know, we do spend a lot of time working together as administrative team. And more, I appreciate your comments because I know all of our teaching staffs work incredibly hard to do what they believe is best for learners. And that does start with the core curriculum. But as Doug said, no two teachers, even like we have little teams, no two teachers exactly the same across a small team. So there's going to be some variability in that sense, but I fully agree that the more that we can work together to provide, because some of the things that we're talking about, you know, we think are good for kids, and every building has things that they do that might be a little bit different, you know, and kind of articulating, identifying, and Linda, I think what you said about, you know, kind of like the T-chart, the 3-column piece is a helpful exercise in starting to have that conversation. But, you know, I just felt I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I do think there's more commonality and collaboration across buildings, really than there has been at any time since I've been here. You know, and I don't want to, you know, I agree with what was said also. You know, the pandemic certainly complicated, you know, some of our attention in this space. There's no question about that. And I agree with you. The pandemic has been lifted, if you will. You know, and we hear what, you know, the feedback that we're receiving and, you know, welcome working together to move toward, you know, I think a more common experience. So sorry for that was a long-winded response, and I didn't mean to go on that long.
That's his long-winded way of saying we were aligning everything, but Tom and I did not collaborate. We had not yet begun to collaborate on things like field trips and field days and other events that we were having. That was not where we were yet. So this, you know, this piece is new, and I know how hard that the three of them are certainly working to get closer aligned in our first full year back to being able to do the things we want to do with our students.
And I do think a piece of that, you know, not to belabor the conversation, I know it's late, you know, there was for a long period of time while I was here where, you know, Memorial was a 5th and 6th grade school. You know, so those grade bands, you know, the overlap of grade bands is a more, you know, somewhat of a more recent phenomenon. You know, when Corn closed, and then, you know, with leading to the fourth grade, moving to Memorial from, you know, the Corn fourth grade, if you will. And then some of the moves in 2020, 21 with sixth grade moving to Strong, and with, you know, so, and third grade moving over to Memorial. So those are some of the, you know, those are part of the equation too, I think, in a little bit of that shift in thinking. So again, I think there's room, definitely room for us to continue that work.
Thank you, Tom, and I thank you very much for staying as long as you did too. And I agree with you bringing up like the grade configuration, because as I said earlier, and again, this is for the board, like that we just, it has to be a priority, because I'm hearing parents and I hear the community loud and clear that if there's anything other than just getting the schools to have all the kids together, it's that there's one school that's pre-K to 2 and there's another school that's K to 4. So I think if we have to start at the basics of making things fair, then we have to relook at that.
I think that's fair too, Maura, and I know that this is not our last conversation on this, and I think this does need to go in for June, the June meeting, and I feel like we're stacking up with the June meeting, so we may need to look at that if Lucy's still on. Doug, if we could look at that for June and see what we can move around and shift time-wise in order to add the stuff that we kind of want to go back to from today. I thank you guys all for staying. It's almost 7 o'clock, so I appreciate you all being here and hanging in, and we'll keep moving along. So if anyone has a motion to adjourn, I'm sure someone would like to say it. Jane.
Oh, okay. I'll so moved.
There's Linda. Okay. Second by Amanda. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you for coming.